Welcome to session 3 today. Thanks for coming. This one is sponsored by Immovis, so thank you very much for them. And today we're going to be dealing with that sort of bullet that no politician wants to bite. It's basically how do you pay for the roads as the tax take goes down and down and down. So we're going to be revisiting road pricing and other radical funding models raised by the 2017 Wolfson Prize. Better ways of paying for better roads, if you remember. We talked about it a lot last year. So to talk about that, we've got Julian Glover, who's director of the 2017 Wolfson Prize, and we've got Gary Rahuja, Gary, who won the Wolfson Prize, and congratulations for that. It's phenomenal. Yeah, the drinks are on you, I think. Although, isn't your wife about to have a baby, or so imminently? Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. 3 weeks from now.
3
so
weeks.
Any time, really.
Yeah, so make the most of your spare time now. And Steve Gooding is obviously director of the RAC Foundation, but worked at the DFT for a very long time and has seen the politics up close and firsthand. And Doug McWilliams, who's Deputy Chairman for the Centre of Economic and Business Research, but basically is a fantastic economist. So was at the CBI, was Chief Economist at IBM, and has some really interesting theories about how we pay for everything and what it will mean for society. So please give them all a welcoming hand. First of all, let's hear from Julian Glover.
Thank you very much, Richard. Yes, my name's Julian Glover. I was a special advisor at the Department for Transport until last year, so I used to avoid having to answer Richard's questions, but now he's got me pinned down. And I also ran the 2017 Wolfson Economics Prize, looking for better ways to pay for better roads. And to me, I was a political appointee, and to me, roads were a political problem. The question isn't what's the technical answer to improve them. You know, people here at this great conference know how to build them, how to run them. But to politicians, they're mostly bad news. They're a source of pollution, bad air quality, noise, congestion, cost, damage to the landscape. And they're also, for now, a source of tax, which mostly goes, as you know, for other things. They're effectively the new cigarettes, something that you can charge in order to fund good things that the government wants to do. And so the challenge is a political one, and the challenge is to turn roads from a political problem into something positive. And that means we've got to rethink the way they're funded. Because not only is the current system of running and paying for roads inefficient, it does nothing to manage use, emissions, or fund in a direct way road improvements, it's also doomed. Because as efficiency grows and fossil fuel use drops away, the money will too. The system knows that, but the pressure is medium-term, and politics needs short-term answers. So what is the route forward? Well, we tried with the 2017 Wolfson Economics Prize to try to help. Stand back from the system, draw in good ideas, and ask people what you would do. And there were lots of great entries. There's huge interest in the prize, entries, and also interest inside government in trying to put some of the ideas in the prize to work. And Gary's entry, which he will talk about, offers a very promising route forward. So I'll just offer a few broad points to get going. And the first one is that it's no good people who back road pricing intellectually, just saying the answer's already obvious. If only politicians are brave, they just need to get on with it. It simply won't happen. You've got to help them to get change and to get the right kind of change. Secondly, I've heard politicians themselves, from the current Chancellor down. I remember, indeed, David Cameron saying to me once, road pricing is obviously the right idea, it's just nobody will ever do it. But I've heard politicians from the Chancellor down say that technology will simply solve the issue. Things like autonomous vehicles, electric cars, all the fashionable things you read about in The Economist. And that, of course, allows them to do nothing now. They think the future will solve their problem. But it's completely untrue. Unless government prepares for a new world, the problem of finance and investment will get worse. Uber is not about to voluntarily pay for better infrastructure. You're going to have to compel it, and you've got to get those systems in place soon, or it'll be too late to put them in. Third, perhaps, more encouragingly, we found, and I found a lot, going around talking about the prize in government and outside, we found that almost everybody actually thinks pricing is a good idea in some form. But they don't realize that everybody else also thinks that. So there's a whole load of people separately, privately thinking, well, of course it's the right thing, if only we got round to do it. But they haven't joined up, and that's the stage that needs to happen next. What we've got to do is bring this conversation out into the open. Even Labour has talked about it. and Labour talked about it again in the form that nobody would really want it. We saw when it happened in a form in London, the public tolerated it because they could see benefits. We've got to agree a plan, get something clear. Now, with the current tottering state of the government, and it's tottering even further this afternoon, I don't pretend that there's about to be immediate action at a national level. There was some hope before the general election that there might be. I don't see it happening at the moment. I don't see very much happening in central government at all at the moment. But I am optimistic that conversations, developments will grow in other places. Cities with powerful mayors, like here in the West Midlands with Andy Street. Cities that need better transport have issues they think they could solve by beginning to manage traffic and charge people and use that revenue to improve roads and improve transport. And I think also inside the system, responsible for roads and transport, from the DVLA to the DFT, Highways England, as well as the Treasury, definitely inside the Treasury, people are getting ready for this new world. They know it's going to come. There isn't a wall of opposition. And I don't think there is one either from drivers or freight customers if we can set out a fair system which they trust and which brings clear benefits and costs. And on that, I come back to my opening point, that the current system isn't going to last. Something else is going to happen. The way we pay for roads is going to change. So the only challenge is to link good ideas and a plan with the politics, hold the hands of the politicians and take them forward into this. Don't expect them to lead on it, they won't. And find out what the right answer might be. And for that, I think I'm handing over to Gary, who's going to give you details of how to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, first of all. My name is Gary Rakuya, and I'm going to tell you about an idea which I had about a year ago when I was trying to purchase insurance for my wife who had just passed her driving test. And please forgive me if you think the idea is too simple. Well, that was intentional. It's because to address the problem that Julian pointed out, I felt the idea has to be simple enough that everyone and anyone can understand it. Now, I will talk about the 3 features that make Miles Better, the proposal, and then I will highlight the four areas in which Miles Better is different to any policy that has been proposed before, as far as I know. But before I do that, I need to capture your attention. So please take a look at this chart. It's our take, with Steve's help, on what's happened in the past 20 years. The blue line is fuel duty revenues in real term. The yellow line is UK vehicle miles, total traffic. Now, what we see is that there was a relationship in the past, but that is gone. Fuel duty is going away, it's phasing out, and revenues are falling by £2.3 million a day. Now, that figure adds up to about the entirety of the Highways England budget within 5 years. So don't think I need to emphasize the point at Highways UK. Now then, Miles Better, the 3 core pillars are, first of all, to replace fuel duty and vehicle excise duty with a new single tax, which is directly proportionate to mileage levels. The reason for this is so that in a future scenario, it can be future-proof, whether there's a growing number of cars driving more miles, or there is a lot less cars which are highly utilized driving a lot more miles nonetheless. I think it's a fair tax, and it's based on the 3 principles of sustainability. It's socially sustainable because it measures road use. It is environmentally sustainable because it captures all harmful emissions, not just carbon dioxide. And it is financially sustainable because it includes a vehicle category multiplier so that vehicles that do more damage to the road surface pay more. The second pillar of Miles Better is, and this, I dare say, is the unique feature, which probably the judges really liked, is that we should use an existing system to collect the revenues. This will keep costs down and also create a win-win scenario, not just for the government, who's saving on collection costs, but for all of us who have to do just a little bit less admin. just that one direct debit less to set up and more time to spend with our families, with my future child. This, you can see, is our user experience. And you can see on the right a high-tech choice, an option for all of us who want to pay in a truly pay-as-you-go fashion for every mile that we drive. On the left, on the other hand, we see the same traditional option, which doesn't require anyone to change what they do at present, and gives comfort to all those wary of buying the cab. They would pay on their declared mileage, and it's critical that insurers already know that. The third point is ring-fencing revenues, and this is something that we feel is fundamental for the public to accept a change. There needs to be a commitment so as to restore trust between politicians and the public, the road users. I think this was what really captured the headlines, is that we promised in the report, if it's implemented, all of Britain's potholes will be fixed in 5 years. So the public clearly likes the idea. Right then, so the 4 ways in which Miles Better is different to any previous road pricing proposal is, firstly, it is not road pricing. You might be disappointed, but this is, again, deliberate. It is a system that in the future, when the public accepts road pricing as a solution, can transition to it seamlessly. However, at present, the vast majority strongly disagree with paying depending on the time and place of where the driving takes place. Secondly, Miles Better is cheap to implement and run. This is in stark contrast to previous proposals, which were expensive both to implement and run. Because it uses the existing system, it will cost less than the current collection costs of fuel duty and vehicle excise duty combined. Third, it doesn't affect privacy. As you saw before, it requires no change whatsoever for all those who are wary of spying the cab. And increased monitoring, this is a fundamental tenet. Increased monitoring will never be compulsory under this system. It gives the option, the choice for consumers. Finally, it has both a no-tech and a high-tech option. Again, just to reiterate, it's fundamental because 15% of the UK's population does not own a smartphone. So no matter the fact that all of us probably here have one, and most of us are probably tech enthusiasts, not everyone is. So we have to cater for all of the UK's road users. So I want to leave you with that, and thank you again. Thank you for listening.
Congratulations again, Gary, for winning. Steve, am I right in thinking you were part of that as well? You were part of the winning bid? Helped out. Yeah. Okay, please welcome Steve Gooding, Director of the RAC Foundation.
Thank you, Richard. Well, we were very happy to work with Gary. Julian put us together after Gary made it onto the shortlist, and we were very interested in working with him on his idea. And I'll hark back. Richard mentioned that in my distant past, I worked in the transport department for many years. And in the period 2004 to 2009, I was responsible, with some others, for working on the development of road pricing. I count those years as sort of well lost in a way. And I learned a few things in that period which I think are relevant now and relevant to some of the challenges, as Julian expressed them, going ahead. In that period, some of you in this room will have gone to transport conferences at that time. And road pricing was always on the agenda. It was always a subject being debated. And I would always get the question, is road pricing about managing traffic, or is it about raising money? My brief was to say, it's both, at which point most people switched off. And it turned out that many people engaged in the debate found achieving two ends with one tool was just too complicated a concept for them. They wanted to be one or the other. And this was, to be fair, quite irritating for me at the time. I thought it was perfectly straightforward. But I think that what I liked particularly about Gary's idea, and what I think will need to be true for any new system, is what we need is a system of paying. Once we have that, and we're all used to it, and we can see that it works, then we might do something more clever with it, something more advanced. But to try to do both at once is just taking on too many problems at a time, taking on too many challenges at a time. And that's why I came to the view, by the time the government had decided to walk away from road pricing, that actually I couldn't see it ever happening. I still have my doubts, to be perfectly honest. But I think that doing something, as Gary's explained, that's a practical and minimum hassle solution is going to be the way that a future government will go down, because be in no doubt that hemorrhaging of money is annoying to the officials in the Treasury. The Chancellor is probably thinking about even bigger numbers as we sit here today. But that's not just the £27 billion from fuel duty as it currently is constituted. There's also another 20 or more billion on top of that at one time government was counting on, because it had a thing called the fuel duty escalator, which I'm sure we all look back on with great fondness. I can't see it being credible politics anytime soon to bring that back. But we have a long-established tradition in this country and around the world that motorists make a net contribution to the exchequer. And if that's going to carry on being the case, then as a motorist, I want that to be as least hassle to me as possible. And if I have to have insurance, and I do, and I think we all should, and if that insurance is potentially going to be black box in the future, telematically based, and I suspect it will be, then wouldn't it make sense to use a system like that and use it for the dual purpose? So that's where we got to with Gary. Looking ahead, we've done our calculations, as have the officials in the Treasury, about at what point does the decline in fuel duty income really start to hurt. At the moment, it's a projection. We know the government has aspirations to promote ultra-low emission cars, electric cars, and the like. I think it's about 2026. I think in 2026, the Chancellor, in preparation for the budget that year, will look at the number that's projected for fuel duty and have something of a hissy fit. And if at that point we haven't had, within Whitehall, but within the country, a bit of a debate about what we should do then, it's going to become even more difficult to do something. It will require what, in civil service parlance, we would call a bold and a brave decision. And my experience, Julian would probably be able to put some colour on this, I would say most of the ministers I worked for weren't that keen on bold or brave, let alone both at once. It's a tough call. And they're probably going to have some other problems to deal with at the same time. Nobody really wants to be having to worry about how we pay for the roads, just as Julian has said. We just really want them to be there as a utility. Ideally, I suspect at some point, that's a point we'll get to. The debate is going on around the world. Meantime, I think the more we can ventilate the idea to the point where, frankly, it's not debated as a point of excitement amongst economists, but as something that's part of the warp and weft. Yes, we've got to do something. This looks about the best. Let's just get on with it. That's probably the point where the change is going to happen. So, one last thought. Gary touched on privacy, and is privacy really that big an issue when you're in a system like this for time, distance, place, road pricing? Are we really that worried? After all, the example put to me is that I'm guessing everyone in the room has a mobile phone. Quite a few of you are looking at them now, so I guess most of the people in the room have a mobile phone, and your phone company knows where you are, and it could produce that record. And you don't seem to mind. Therefore, would we mind when we're driving? Well, I'm just going to try this one experiment on you, and I would like a show of hands, please. So, first up, show of hands, people in the room who routinely drive a car. Do you drive? Let's just see how many of you. Well, unsurprisingly, I think that's everyone. Now, this is a slightly more complicated question. Put your hand up if you think the person sitting next to you probably broke the speed limit last time they drove. Yeah, so most of you are telling the truth, some of you are too shy. Unless we can get past that, privacy is going to carry on being a big issue in this picture. So have that thought in mind. We need practical to the point of boring, private to the point that we don't feel intruded upon, and simple if we're going to make change. Thank you.
Gary, we're going to have some more fascinating ideas now from Doug McWilliams from the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Welcome, Doug.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, congratulations, Julian, on energizing the field of discussion of road pricing by setting up the Wolfson Prize. You've done a tremendous job there. Many congratulations for what you've done. And congratulations, Gary, for winning, because I think your ideas are very innovative, and I think that they can be combined with other people's ideas, and I think we can see how we can move forward in this. Now, I'm going to cut my presentation short because it will leave more time for discussion, and try not to repeat points that other people have already made. My first point is that this is an international problem. It's not just a British problem. Everyone everywhere in the world is trying to find a solution to this. And I think there will be a prize for getting the best solution, because I think your technology may well get picked up and used internationally. So this could become a source of competitive advantage for UK PLC if we get it right. That is important. The picture shows the largest ever traffic jam. It's in China, and it lasted 14 days. So if you get stuck on the M25 and you think that you're getting bored because you're home an hour late, just think of that. We know about the problem, and I'm not going to repeat that in any more detail. It is a very clear problem that is well understood. But I am going to point out that we do reconcile supply and demand on the roads at the moment through the world's most inefficient possible way of doing it. It's called traffic jams. And traffic jams are lose, 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 lose. Everything on traffic jams works badly. Anyone who's stuck, they lose time, they waste time. Environmentally, it's awful. It's awful from... There's only one possible gainer, because if you're burning fuel and not moving, it does create some tax revenue. But that's just about it. Otherwise, it is the world's most disastrous way of trying to reconcile supply and demand. And surely we can do better than that. Now, the opportunity, as everyone knows, is coming with the technology. And by the way, the technology provides both a carrot and a stick. Gary pointed out the stick very clearly to go with the opportunity. Now, we've got a multi-point plan. And if you're really excited, give me your business cards, and I'll send you the 30 pages, which, if nothing else, will help you sleep. And the two key points, I guess, come from our background in macroeconomics. And one is a slightly similar point to the point that Gary made, which is that the revenue has to be ring-fenced in some way. I think where the congestion charging in London has failed to get credibility is a feeling that the money is being ripped off. It hasn't solved the problem. In fact, the roads are more congested because they used it and then they took away road space effectively. And so all we've got is reduced usage and slower speeds. That is not a huge recommendation. That's not a greatest CV to have for your particular proposal. And we've built on... I'm Scottish, so as you can probably guess from my name, and we built on the system for financing Scotland, which may not work terribly well for that particular purpose, but we think can be applied in the context of roads, which is to say, okay, roads take up a certain amount of space. If you capitalize that and charge a decent rent, oddly enough, the sum comes to the difference between what is raised in taxation on road usage and what is spent on the roads. It's about 30-odd billion. And just as luck has it, you could say, okay, let's ring-fence that. The road system pays that into the treasury, fixes as a proportion of GDP, and that is the Barnett formula for saying, okay, road users will pay rent and that money will go to the government, and the government, having got that money, can go and blow it on what it wants. Parties, bribes, anything. They can spend it on what they want. The money goes to them. Or they could even put it to good use, which is obviously a lower probability, but just a possibility. The second thing is to say, build on the concept of the MPC, which is to have an independent body, in this case tasked with looking after the interests of the road users. And the money, minus the Barnett formula money that goes to the government, the money would be left to be reinvested in the road system. So you're working at both ends of the system. You're putting in a charge which constrains demand, and you're putting in an ability to link the money coming in to the money that then gets spent on the road system. Now, following on from Uber, I know it's banned in London, but I suspect that decision will be changed. We've thought of surge charging. And we think surge pricing will actually be the thing that really makes this work. Paying extra at times of high demand. We think that is the other ingredient that is necessary. And again, provided the money gets channeled back into the system, that is a sensible ingredient that both helps manage demand and also at the same time manages supply. So you're operating in both ways to try and improve the system. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest of the details. The financials add up, and the great advantage of bringing it in as the technology improves is the technology is reducing the other costs of road usage. So that helps. And distributionally, there are people who lose. It's not actually the very poorest, because the very poorest are never going to be paying road user charges. It's the people from about the third decile upwards who drive O-bangers. They're the ones who get hit most. And so you have to look carefully at how they can be looked after or grandfathered. But there are huge economic gains from this, not just in the domestic market, but if we can make it work properly and be world leaders in this, it can work internationally as well. Now, let me just come up with a bit of light relief. I am a self-confessed petrol head. I love cars. I've signed up to do the 2019 Paris-Peking endurance rally in that grey car in there. The great advantage of being an S1 Bentley is the engine is the same engine as was used for the tanks in the desert during the Second World War. So it should help me get through the Gobi Desert. And my brother, who is an engineer, will make sure that the car keeps going. But classic cars are going to be a problem in this brave new world. We're going to have to think. They benefit the economy, and they keep a lot of men particularly, and some women, out of mischief by fiddling with engines and things like that. It stops them doing all sorts of stupid things that they might otherwise be doing. I think it would be a pity to lose that element from the economy. But if we are going to preserve it, we are actually going to have to think quite hard. And long term, the biggest challenge is that we're going to need to have some petrol stations. And I suggest the classic car clubs get together to organize their own petrol stations, which may only have to be open on a Sunday if we decide in the end that Sunday is the day for classic car motoring. So on that slightly more light-hearted note, can I thank you so much for listening? Thank you very much indeed.